get up and dash 100 meters and I would eat up the competition. It's just non-existent. I kick my feet up. Thought I was passing till I got blasted.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. So, I came across this article that I thought y'all would be interested in. It says, wrestlers worse off in AEW than they were in WWE. So, I haven't read this whole thing, but it's a provocative title. And it's actually written August the 10th, 2022. So now, as of recording, it is September the 2nd. So, they had a month to get this sort of thing together. Let's see if any of the wrestlers on this list were better booked in WWE than they were in AEW. So, let's see. Let's read some of it. It says, no matter what anyone thinks of the product, the rise of All Elite Wrestling has been vital to the pro wrestling industry. Monopolies are detrimental to all industries, and choice is paramount to growth. All of that is true. Most importantly, competition is healthy, and AEW keeps WWE on its toes, and it provides options for the talent if they aren't happy where they are. It's also beneficial to the fans because who wouldn't want more wrestling on television and in their lives? So, okay, that's a good preamble for this. So let's just get into some of the names. Well, one of the names is immediately is in the article picture, but I will wait. The first name is Malakai Black. Interesting. Let's see what it says about Malakai Black. They talk about, of course, his time in NXT, his time getting released from WWE, his feud with Cody Rhodes. It says, unfortunately, his momentum was all but halted after the arrivals of CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, and Adam Cole into the company. While he formed a powerhouse stable known as the House of Black, his position on the card slid further down. In WWE, he feuded with the likes of Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins near the top of the shows, but now he's stuck in trios matches and nowhere near being seen as a future AEW World Champion. Okay. Malakai Black is a very interesting case. Considering everybody had such high hopes for Malakai Black. And it's sad what they've done to him, but this is an accurate representation of what happened. You know, bigger stars came in and he kind of got pushed to the side. Which is unfortunate, but I think it's what most people called when they saw this happening in AEW. People were kind of like, okay, so what you going to do with, Andrade or Malakai Black or Miro or, the guys who were there, who were big stars, in WWE. Well, if you want to say big stars, but they were guys that was considered underutilized in WWE. And now they moved to AEW for a fresh coat of paint. But then they immediately get drowned out by, again, bigger stars. They're not really given the opportunity to spread their wings. And that's one positive thing that TNA was able to get away with, is that they had a space for a guy like Mr. Kennedy or Rob Van Dam or whatever to be able to go over there and actually blossom. Sometimes they probably pushed them too fast and made them top guys too fast, but they didn't have to worry about, too many WWE guys jumping at one time. Or too many, quote unquote, big stars jumping at one time. TNA was smart about at least trickling those guys in. They did overpush a lot of them, but they at least trickled them in and didn't bring them in like back to back to back to back to back. That was at least a positive for them. The next one they have is Ruby Soho. She's a tragic case because she wasn't really utilized that well by WWE. They talked about her being the Joker at the All Out Casino Battle Royale, which I forgot about. Her feud with the Jericho Appreciation Society, Blackpool Combat Club, etc. And it said as Ruby Riott, she was in the middle of a reunion with Liv Morgan, a beloved tag team. I don't know about this one. I don't know about Ruby Soho, man. I think she was actually used better in AEW because she was actually given a top level feud in AEW at least once. She never even got that in WWE. She never really climbed above being a jobber in WWE. So I'm not going to say that she was used better in WWE. I'm not going to say that. This one I'm going to give to AEW because at the very least, she was well represented in the Owen Hart tournament. She did okay for herself. And she did okay for herself in her feud with Britt Baker. It's just unfortunate that AEW doesn't know what to do with, women after a certain point. They begin to sort of just put them on the shelf. And that's kind of, again, the same thing with pretty much everybody. I'm going to guess everybody on this list is that they bring in, they come in hot, but 2-3 weeks later, they're ice cold, and then somebody else is coming in. Like Ruby Soho has just kind of dissolved in water, you know. The same thing can be said for Athena, you know. She's kind of dissolved in water. She came in hot. Everybody was very excited. She came in anti-WWE, but it was like 2 weeks later, it was like, where is she? You're doing the Christian from the ramp looking for her. Like, where is she? You bringing out the binoculars. Like, where is she? Where did she go? And, you know, now she's got a pay-per-view match despite not being no TV time invested in her at all. Let's see. Next, who they got? Jake Hager. There's an argument to be made that Jake Hager peaked as Jack Swagger in 2010. Well, yes, I think that is more than fair to say that. But I will say this: I did like the We the People stuff. I thought that was tremendous, even as a heel. Even though I am, you know, kind of patriotic myself, the patriotic heel, it worked. You know, the pure, what you would call redneck Republican, you know, We the People concept. It worked as a heel, and I think it would have gotten over as a babyface too. And I think that would have worked. With him and Dutch Mantel, that shit would have worked. It would have cranked. Unfortunately, he started out as a heel first, and Fox News complained, and a bunch of other people complained, and then he got arrested for drugs. So I think he got popped with weed. It wasn't nothing major. And that kind of derailed his career. And he was working stiff. He like gave some guys concussions and stuff like that. So he's not like the most graceful bastard in the world. But I wouldn't say he peaked, but it's not that far off. Because I think the All-American was, 2014? So maybe 3 or 4 years later. But he certainly peaked when he won the Elimination Chamber and was supposed to wrestle Alberto Del Rio. Because I actually saw a lot of dirt sheets claiming that he was supposed to win that match. And a lot of people, I think even he said that he was supposed to win that match. But then he got busted with the drugs. So he was going to be a 2-time world champion, but he got arrested between Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania. And they didn't want to put the belt on him, which is unfortunate. But let's continue. They talked about him being world heavyweight champion, the Real American stable. It says after a successful venture into MMA, where he went on an impressive run of victories. I guess it was this Bellator? He debuted in AEW in 2009. He's one of the first people signed to AEW, by the way. There was a potential to take his real-life combat skills and incorporate it into a gimmick that would make him fearsome, comparable to how Brock Lesnar... Oh, my God. Why would you... No. He was never going to be comparable to Brock Lesnar. He just doesn't have he's got a good amateur wrestling background, but he doesn't have the charisma. He doesn't have the physique. He doesn't have the status. And the moment that Jake Hager talks, you just hear country boy, you know, and he speaks with a lisp. Like if he'd have been quiet, like if Jericho would have done all the talking for him, then maybe you could have gotten away with it, at least for a little while. But let's say it says, unfortunately, any splash only came from the bottom turnbuckle, as Hager has done nothing more than hang on to Jericho's coattails throughout his run. He has had no singles feud to speak of and acts more like a peripheral figure in Tony Khan's company, even if it's unlikely that Hager has been a main event talent in WWE. If he were still there, he'd certainly be doing more than carrying Jericho's bags. Ooh, that's kind of ugly, dog. Why would you say that about this man? But it's a good point. You know, I think I said this during my Dynamite review, where you can actually count probably on one hand how many matches Jake Hager has actually had as a singles in AEW. Well, probably not even on one hand. You probably need both. But he's been there since 2019. And let's see how many I can count off the top of my head. He wrestled Danielson on Dynamite recently. He wrestled Wardlow in a cage match. He wrestled Cody in a cage match. I think those two things are 2 years old. I think he wrestled Wardlow in that MMA inspired thing, didn't he? He wrestled, I think, Dustin on TV. That's when they brought in Jake Hager's wife, and she didn't really add anything to his character. That was so bad. What other matches did he have? That's 4. And I'm looking over the course of 3 years, and I can come up with 4 matches. 4 singles matches, by the way. There's got to be more than that, but I just can't think of them. But I think we'll probably be able to get to 10. If you Google it, you'll probably get to 10. But off the top of your head, nothing memorable. All right. Let's see who else they got next. Adam Cole, baby. He's the face of this article, by the way. So let's say it appears that beyond the big intro and the Adam Cole baby shtick, he isn't much better off if he had stuck around in WWE. Forget about the rumor that WWE wanted to cut Adam Cole's hair and use him as Keith Lee's manager. Let's take a look at the facts presented to us. And they talk about his run in NXT, of course. And he says, while Cole has regularly appeared on AEW television, won the inaugural Owen Hart Cup, and challenged for the AEW World title on a couple of occasions, it's difficult to see where he can go from here. And the main event scene, packed with names like Jon Moxley, CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Adam Page, and Kenny Omega, does anyone see Cole displacing any of them as the new face of AEW? Well, I think the bar is kind of high in that regard. Because we're setting the bar higher than can he be world champion? Which is, the answer to that question is yes. He can be AEW world champion. It's all about how they choose to utilize the talent. Everybody can't be a top guy at the same time. If you take into account that Moxley is on his second run, Danielson probably doesn't even care about being world champion. Kenny Omega is kind of broken down and will be doing the trios thing for a while. Adam Page, you can forget him. Because if given the choice between Adam Page and Adam Cole, most people are going to go with Cole. So you're looking at somebody like CM Punk basically being the only guy that's in Adam Cole's way. So if you think that Cole can't go over at CM Punk and put him over and become world champion, you're wrong. I think Adam Cole can be world champion in AEW. I just don't think that it's likely anytime soon. Especially if they're, and this of course is assuming MJF is going to come back. But AEW has been glacial at moving talent forward. To me, quite honestly, Adam Cole should have beat Adam Page for that title because nobody really cared about Adam Page being the champion. He's a guy that the people who were interested in Hangman Page were interested in the chase. Once he actually got the belt, people were kind of like, oh, he should lose to Danielson, which he should have. Oh, he should have lost to Adam Cole, which, yeah, he should have. He didn't feud against anybody. I guess Lance Archer, that people were like, oh yeah, I would prefer for Adam Page to be the champion. So I believe that he can be AEW world champion. It's just all about how AEW chooses to book it. Is he better off in AEW than he is in WWE or vice versa? Well, in WWE, he was a top guy, leader of his own stable. It was developmental. But he was a leader of his own stable, and people considered him. I hate to cut myself off, but I think what's been done is there's been a lot of damage to his image as opposed to in WWE. When he was in WWE, Adam Cole was sort of the epitome of a cool guy. He was still small. He still didn't have, rippling muscles. He still had the wet hair, the Adam Cole baby, the whole 9 yards. But he wasn't considered a dork. And I think as soon as he went to AEW, he started cosplaying with his friends. He started doing comedy stuff. And he just kind of got that dork stuff splattered all over him. And it's like, if you go back and you look at Adam Cole in NXT, you wouldn't think that it was the same person in AEW. Like there was no real dorkishness at all in Undisputed Era. It seemed like they were the next, I wouldn't say the second coming of DX, but that's clearly what Triple H was going for, was that, they were the cool guys, the new clique, and that's kind of what Triple H was going for. That was the image that he crafted for an Undisputed Era. But the moment he went to AEW, he fit like a glove with his friends because they are his friends. But unfortunately, that cool factor does not apply. It applies to, I guess, some of the neck beardy, Cheeto eating demographics. That's what they like. But to most average people, they looked at that and said, ooh, like, I'm not interested in that. He's leaning too far into the gamer stuff. He's leaning too far into the comedy crap. He's not coming across as the cool leader of a group. It sucks. It just truly sucks. So it's tough. It's tough, but it's easily he was better off in NXT. But he couldn't stay there forever, and that was ultimately that's the one thing that keep me from saying he was probably better off in WWE. It's because he couldn't stay there forever. And nobody could have seen that Vince McMahon was going to, light his own career on fire. If Adam Cole was still there, though, I think he probably would definitely have survived a little bit longer. He probably would have been a solid Intercontinental Champion until Triple H took over. Then he probably would have got the rocket put to him. But I don't know, man. I'm trying to be fair and say if Vince looked at this guy, he probably would have seen that he was very small. He's charismatic, but he's very small. But he fits like a glove in AEW. They don't care about him being small. The problem is he's just a dork, and the image of the character is destroyed. Andrade el ídolo, look at me, look at me. This one's gonna be tough too. It says, they talked about his NXT run, of course, him being the United States champion, his feud with Rey Mysterio. Of course, he got upset when he was undrafted. He wasn't used for a long time. And it says, while he might show up on Dynamite and Rampage from time to time, he isn't exactly the first or fifth name written down on the booking sheet. The question is, would he be in the same situation if he had stayed in WWE? Considering WWE cares more about promos now, then I think that it would probably be a problem. I just don't think it works. Like, Andrade is a guy who, for me, I'm just going to say for me, he's a complete package with the exception of the promo. The guy can work. He's got a phenomenal look. He's not fucking small. He's in shape. There's a cool factor to him. The problem is the promos. English isn't his native language. If they'd have kept him with Zelina Vega, that would have worked in WWE with the right push. WWE just was not interested in utilizing him because he couldn't cut promos on his own. That's stupid. It sucks. Especially WWE pushed Alberto Del Rio. And I was one of those guys who didn't really dislike Alberto Del Rio. I thought he was a cool character too. But English, of course, is also not his first language. So I think that if you compare the two, Andrade is light years better than Alberto. He's a better worker than Alberto. He's more charismatic than Alberto. He's better looking than Alberto. He's not in better shape. But, he's just Alberto Del Rio. If, you take that as that's what Vince McMahon wants, because that's the guy he pushed. When he was given the opportunity, he pushed the guy right out of the gate. He gave a super push to Alberto Del Rio to the point where I think he won the Royal Rumble in his first year. If that's the blueprint for what, a Mexican superstar, Andrade is over Alberto for sure. It was just a different time, and Vince just didn't give a fuck anymore. So, that's in the last couple of years where he just saw talent, and the guy's younger than Alberto too, if I remember correctly. So he has everything going for him. And he was already a superstar in Mexico and in Japan. So the guy already had a following. And he was basically given this hot property. And Vince fumbled the bag. And he just didn't know what to do with him. Just didn't know how to get the most out of Alberto. Andrade. And I think that there are certain elements to AEW, such as, sort of the slimy businessman. I like the character for him. The sort of mafia image that AEW has created for him, I like that. I think that fits Andrade. But AEW has zero interest in doing anything with this guy. Like he literally doesn't do anything. We go week after week after week of him doing nothing. And the guy just getting older. It's a shame. I say this is equal though. At least he was NXT champion in WWE, so I guess you can give him a +1 on that. It took forever. He was a jobber for a long time in NXT too. But you can give him a +1 for becoming an NXT champion. But he's pretty much in the same boat. He barely is used in WWE. They put him in a stable with Angel and Zelina, and that had tremendous potential, and they fumbled that. In AEW, he didn't even have a great stable. He just kind of has this guy who speaks for him, but the guy barely speaks. and they put him in a stable with fucking Matt Hardy's group and Private Party, and I was like, nah. Maybe he was better off in WWE. I think it was equal though. I think it's equal to the point where he probably wasn't going to get to the top in either promotion, and he's not utilized to the best of his abilities in either promotion. It's almost the exact same thing. You go weeks without seeing the guy. In WWE, you go weeks without seeing Andrade. In AEW, you go weeks without seeing him. So I guess it's a wash. It's the same thing, you know. Next, let's see. They got Miro, the Redeemer. So as Rusev, Miro had quite the ride in WWE United States Champion. Of course, the big WrestleMania moment with the tank and everything. Scoring victories over John Cena and Sheamus. In AEW, he would pick up the TNT Championship and lose it to Sammy Guevara. While he entered the AEW World Title Eliminator, he lost to Danielson. It says, while all the former WWE talents jumping ship to AEW have leapfrogged Miro, and he's no better off where he is now than when he was in his former company. Perhaps he might have more luck in ROH if he decides to slide across there. I'm telling you, if they send him to Ring of Honor, that's a slap in the face. Miro is tremendous. All right, I think he's had great character work in both WWE and AEW. I think the Redeemer is probably better than anything he's ever done in WWE. The character has layers to it. It has menace to it. There's no comedy as opposed to Rusev Day, which was like about 60 to 70% comedy. There's no Lana to take the shine off of him, there's no cuck angles. So that's always a plus, right? There's no cuck angles for him to have to do. But if you ask the question, was he better off in WWE than AEW? I think he was a guy in WWE that was incredibly frustrated because he had gotten over, and he had gotten over to the point where he should have been rewarded for it and pushed. How far? Who knows? Because he had been a great contender against Drew McIntyre or Lashley or somebody like that. Absolutely. Is he a great opponent for like Roman Reigns? I think they had a feud in 2018 or something like that. I think that he could have been a guy. He's big enough to be considered a challenge to Roman Reigns. His promo style is, I think, good enough, if with the right character, of course, where he could have been a contender against a guy like Roman. Could he have wrestled a guy like Brock? I think so. You know, like, I'm looking at Miro and saying, like, this is a big fucking guy who was dedicated to staying in shape, who didn't mind making fun of himself, so he had a good sense of humor. He's a little bit of a dork, you know, a little bit of a knucklehead, with the video game and the streaming stuff and all that shit. Not saying that, you know, just because you're a gamer, you're a dork, but, you know, he was just kind of very involved with that. And speaking of that, that's kind of how he was introduced in AEW. And so his introduction was garbage. It was absolute trash. Would I have rather him be the Russian sympathizer or some video game freak hanging out with Kip Sabian? I would rather him be the Russian sympathizer. At least there was heat there. You know, but the Redeemer is the best shit he's ever done. But it's not going anywhere. So it's not a wash completely. Because in AEW, he's not allowed to beat anybody. You know, he's not wrestling CM Punk and beating him. He's not wrestling Danielson and beating him, or Moxley and beating him. In WWE, they were not afraid to give him big staple victories and get him close to the title. In AEW, despite the fact that how over he was and how interesting his character is, he's not going anywhere near that title. At least not right now from what I see. And that's unfortunate. I think he was definitely closer to being WWE champion than he was to being AEW champion. So maybe we'll say, even though he came up with the best character he's ever come up with in AEW, he was far more over in Rusev Day and probably a lot more interesting. So we'll go with, he probably was better off in WWE. Next, this is a long article. Matt Sydal. Are you kidding me? Evan Bourne? We're just going to skip this, all right? Let's just skip this, because I don't remember that much about Matt Sydal in WWE. Only thing I remember about Matt Sydal in WWE is that he took that awesome RKO out of a Shooting Star Press or something like that. He wasn't going anywhere. He's not going anywhere in AEW. Why are we even talking about that fucking guy? Let's not even waste our time or energy on Matt Sydal. Okay, he's a jobber in both companies. Who cares? Buddy Matthews. Better utilized in WWE. Well, had a long. Let's read what they have to say. It says in the early days of AEW run, he says we have stumbled into a major problem: the House of Black. While the stable looks exciting on paper and features 3 bona fide bruisers in the shape of Matthews, Malakai Black, and Brody King, it becomes difficult to decide who to elevate from the group. Well, you don't need to make that decision. You have multiple fucking championships. You can elevate all 3 of them. There used to be a time where a guy like a Dusty Rhodes would feud with everybody in the Four Horsemen, and that would be considered a top feud. Why can't it be that a guy like Jon Moxley or a guy like CM Punk feuds with everybody in the House of Black one at a time, and each one of them tries to win the title? You don't have to elevate one person. You can elevate all 3. You can have one be the TNT champion and the other 2 be the tag team champions, and then you can rotate that. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with the House of Black outside of just make them. I guess they're trying to go for special attraction, where they only pop up every once in a while, but that ain't working. It ain't working. Let's continue this a little bit. It says, while Matthews was nowhere near the headlining act when he was in WWE, he was embroiled in terrific storyline with Monday Night Messiah Seth Rollins, which was his profile wonders and introduced him to a wider audience. Yeah. The guy's a tremendous worker. He's a brick house as far as being in shape. He never really was put in a position to cut good promos. Most people who even care about this fucking guy cares about him because of his incredible Cruiserweight Championship run, which was in WWE. So was he better utilized in WWE than in AEW? Yes, because at least he was given his own space. 205 Live was at least his own space where he could do tremendous stuff, and he didn't have to have a character. He was able to go out there and have great matches. And he did that. And that reputation is what got him in AEW. They just don't utilize it, And it doesn't help that a lot of times when he was in NXT or 205 Live or whatever, they saw him as a quote unquote knockoff Kenny Omega. And I saw a lot of people say that about him. And that being said, I'm not surprised why he doesn't get a push in AEW, because they have Kenny Omega on the roster. So they probably say, oh, he's a fake Kenny Omega, yada, yada, yada. And maybe that's the stench that's on his character, is that he's a fake Kenny Omega. I don't know. But the guy is very good in the ring. Not much in the way of character. At least they're trying to give him a character in AEW. They didn't even try in WWE. They gave him that love angle with Aaliyah Mysterio, and that fell through. There was potential there for that, though. Let's see who's next. Matt Hardy. Oh, come on. Matt Hardy has 20 years of history in WWE. I'm not about to do this. All right. I'm not about to do Matt Hardy. All right. Matt Hardy is not fair. If you just want to talk about the last few years of Matt Hardy's career, in terms of being allowed to do what he wants to do, he sucked in AEW. He's been awful. Ever since he came over to AEW, he's been bad. But he was bad the last few years he was in WWE too. The whole thing with the broken Matt Hardy, that shit had jumped the shark already. It jumped the shark really right before he left Impact. It stopped being sort of revolutionary. People just want to see him take that act everywhere else. And he sort of did. It started in TNA. It was great. It worked. People thought it was tremendous. It was over. Sold a lot of merchandise. Got a lot of eyeballs on TNA. Then I think he took it to Ring of Honor for a little while. Then he came to WWE. They were reluctant to do anything with it because it wasn't Vince's idea, for starters. Second, they were being sued by Impact over that character. So then when WWE finally started to do it, they put him with Bray Wyatt, and that shit just, it just wasn't working. It just wasn't working. And then they decided to do the Hardy Boys. And, well, I think the Hardy Boys was obviously before that. But, I think Matt Hardy is done. He should have retired 2 or 3 years ago. The fact that Matt Hardy isn't doing much in AEW it's not really AEW's fault. Matt Hardy can barely fucking walk. And it's been true even when he was in WWE. That's why he started doing the broken Matt Hardy stuff anyway. He started getting broken down. Matt Hardy's TNA singles matches weren't very good, and this shit was 6 years ago. So it's not AEW's fault that Matt Hardy sucks. You know, Matt Hardy is one of those guys that, quite frankly, has gone on too long. And Matt Hardy was the last guy on the list. So, what do you guys think? I think it was a pretty good list. I think we should probably, we could probably add some people to it. You could ask Athena, was she better off in WWE or AEW? She hasn't done nothing in AEW so far. She's done nothing. And in NXT, she was at least an NXT Women's Champion, and she was an NXT Tag Team Champion. But on the main roster, she barely made a dent because she can't cut promos, she can't talk, and she's a dork. So I mean, it is what it is. But I think she would be the only one I would probably add to this list is her, because at least in WWE there's a tag team division for her to do some cool stuff in. And maybe she could team up with somebody who's got some charisma, some personality. While in AEW, they don't have that. So she's kind of fucked. But let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.